Welcome to Two Roads Crossing, a podcast production of the Christian Veterinary Mission. Do you wonder how your faith fits together with your profession? Well, join us as we explore how to live well at the intersection of two roads crossing.
Well, hello and welcome. It's great having you join us once again here on Two Roads Crossing. My name is Barry Schwenk. I'm a pastor, a veterinarian, and your host as we explore the intersection of faith and veterinary medicine. Since 1976, the Christian Veterinary Mission has been dedicated to sharing the love of Christ through veterinary medicine wherever the Lord takes us. Sometimes the greatest challenge is not across the ocean, however, it's right here in your own community. And you may or may not be aware, but CVM has an entire team dedicated to helping veterinary professionals navigate the challenges and opportunities that we face right here in the United States. So who exactly are they? What exactly do they do? And how can they help you with your ministry and faith walk? Let's get to the bottom of all those questions. Not like an investigative journalist all of a sudden. Like I'm going to pop out with an envelope for you. Sorry,
Intimidated.
I don't know why I sounded like that. Today, I am joined by the Director of Workplace and Student Ministries, Dr. Lauren Charles. It is great to have you back here with me again. How are you doing today?
Good to be back. Thank you.
It's great to have you. I enjoyed having our little bit of a chat just to kind of get an insight into your life and kind of your journey, not just with CVM, but even before that. So it's always kind of fun to hear where people are coming from. But you are currently the Workplace and Student Ministries Director. How long have you been carrying that illustrious title?
You mean long title? Since October of 2019, I have been in this role, although I was called the U.S. Ministries Director until just a couple years ago when we changed the title to Workplace and Student Ministries Director. Same job, different title.
You have to get a second business card and kind of glue them
Basically,
side by side to get it
like
all
a panoramic business card.
A panoramic business card. I like that idea. It's a great.
Won't fit in your wallet, but
it won't. But people won't forget because they're trailing the whole thing.
It would be unique.
So how exactly did that start? Because I think last time when we talked, you had you had come back from Bolivia and kind of settled back into the U.S. around 2012, if I remember right. And you came into, there was like this new region rep model. How did the progression in U.S. ministries happen to get you to this point here? Yeah.
So I came back. Were you on as a region rep already when I came on? I can't remember when that model started. Somewhere around there. Right?
It started that year in 2012. I think I came in, like there was that first, because it was, it was you and Roy. And,
I think Joe Wright was a part of it.
Joe Wright, Roy Kuhlman, Glenn Gaines.
Oh, yeah. Mary McDonald had been kind of doing it.
Yeah. There was like this, there had been
hodgepodge, motley crew.
Yeah. There were like a couple of people who were testing it out. And I think 2012 was the first time that they tried to formalize that model, I think. And I came in shortly after you did, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, thereabouts.
Yeah, and the model stuck. I think I'm the only one that stuck with it since then, but the model stuck. So 2012, I became a region rep for the Southeast US and loved it and thought I would retire from it, just continue doing that. I was very content. My husband thought, you can't keep in student ministries when you're old. And it's like, sure I can. Why not? But so I continued doing that happily. And then in 2019, probably in July, the leadership of CVM, it would have been Kit and Kit Flowers and Krista Forseth, who was my director at the time, asked me if I would consider taking the U.S. Ministries Director role, which was Krista's role, but she was going to move into a different role. And this was in June of 2019. And I said, no, I don't very happy. Thank you. But they pushed and they needed me to do it, and it was going to help CVM out and serve CVM. And in hindsight, I think looking back, it was because Krista was moving into a role to start working with the new CVM veterinary conference that we were planning. So she was going to move into a different part of ministry with CVM because we wanted to really focus on that CVM veterinary conference that we've done 3 times now. So I'm glad that I could help with that because it's been wonderful. But they asked me in June. I resisted, but finally gave in and took the role in October. But a neat story about that is that I was pretty overwhelmed when they asked already. So I couldn't tell them when they asked me because we had just found out like minutes before that we were pregnant with our 4th child. And this was in June. In August, I was about to start homeschooling our oldest biological child. So I was going to be homeschooling and about to have another baby and supposed to do the region rep role as well as the U.S. Ministries director role. And so that's why I really hesitated to do it. And so then in the fall, during our school visit season, which is when the region reps are really busy on the road, I'm pretty overwhelmed just thinking, because I hadn't taken on the director role yet, but I had been on the road for 6 weeks straight. So coming home here and there, but every week for 6 weeks had been traveling some, and I had these 3.5 kids by then, and was trying to homeschool one of them at that point. And so I remember being on my way home from Tuskegee University, driving back, which is like a 7.5 hour drive, driving back and probably trying to get home quickly because of the kids I had at home. It was like 2 o'clock in the morning. And I was just overwhelmed and just talking to God. There's nobody out there. It's just dark and late, and it's just you and your thoughts and God. And so I remember just telling God, I can't do this. I can't add on to what I'm already doing, being the director of this ministry too. And I was crying. And I remember just like leaning down on the steering wheel. I'm driving so safely, I think, but just kind of leaning into the steering wheel. And I looked up and a shooting star went right across the sky, right when I had just kind of said, I can't do this, God. And the shooting star went across the sky. And I was like, oh, okay, you can do this. I'll just let you do it. And I didn't know what that meant, but it gave me a lot of comfort. And so I think back, this is October of 2000, or this is probably September of 2019. And I was thinking I was going to have to come to Seattle 4 times a year because that's what they had asked me to do. And then I was going to have to, and for like a week at a time, and I was going to have to continue my Southeast region rep role. And then we were going to have our baby in February. Well, in February of 2020, you know what else happened? The pandemic.
What? Tell us.
The pandemic hit. I know, shocker. And so in March of 2020, the world shut down, and it was easy to do it all. Like God he didn't allow the pandemic for me, but it was a perfect transition into the director role because I didn't go to Seattle 4 times a year because nobody was going anywhere. And my region rep role was all virtual for a year. So instead of being gone from this new baby and not being able to homeschool, I was home all the time. So it was just really neat. And it was also really neat because that year we have a theme every year with CVM. Most of you probably know. And so our theme that year was strong and courageous from Joshua 1:9. And I am kind of a bullheaded person. I'm not really nervous about things. I don't get afraid. And so I was kind of bored with this theme idea of strong and courageous because, oh yeah, that's easy. I'm strong and I'm courageous. But God really let me get broken that fall right before we did this. And so it was such neat timing that I was really broken and weak when we were about to go into this theme. And then he reminded me to rely on him for my strength and my courage because he won't let us down. And so he didn't let me down, and it's worked out well. We've had to make some adjustments as our team has grown and my family has grown. But I'm still doing the region rep role and the director role.
Well, that probably echoes with a lot of people because there's a general sense of just being overwhelmed and incapable in so many areas of our lives these days. And so that story is, it's really close to home. And I think, you can kind of see yourself reflected in a story like that, the way that God kind of orchestrates things and brings things back together to the point where he has you where he wants you and needs you. You mentioned, your team, for folks that are maybe new to CVM, or even folks that are part of CVM that don't quite understand this. What exactly is the team that you oversee, and what are their primary areas of responsibility?
Yeah. So the region reps cover the workplace and the student ministries for their different regions. And so they cover the schools and they do the student ministry that way. And then they also go to the conferences and do workplace. So our region rep team currently, I cover the Mideast region, which is Tennessee, Indiana, Kentucky, and Alabama. But then we have other region reps all around. So we have our newest is Nancy Crutch. She's a practice manager in the South Central region. And we have Curtis Gibbs, who's been interviewed on the podcast before. He's in the West region and he lives out in Washington. And Elizabeth Mendoza is another veterinarian. She covers the North Central region. And Dr. Kara Song is another veterinarian in the Northeast, and she lives in Ohio. And have Nancy Moore, a veterinarian in Florida who covers the Southeast. And we also work really closely with Lisa Balzer, who is covering as a region rep and director for Canada. So she is kind of part of our team, but also not exactly part of our team because they're their own ministry. Canada is a separate ministry, but
they have their own thing, but it's always nice to have a group that you can check in with.
Yeah.
You can
we
get
love her like the rest of our team.
That's right. That's right. So let's, as per your title, it is workplace and student ministry. So if I was going to ask you the question, what exactly do you all do? I can assume it's workplace student related. It makes it really easy for someone like me, but what exactly is involved? What do you and your region reps kind of oversee or do in regards to workplace ministry?
Yeah, I think you alluded to it a little bit in your investigative journalist intro at the beginning. I can't remember what you said exactly, but it made me think of what we do. So CVM in general wants to share Christ's love through veterinary medicine. And so what I think we do, maybe more on our team than others, or maybe the same, but we want to share Christ's love to you and through you. So we want to share Christ's love to the veterinary profession and through the veterinary profession. So a lot of our missions team, when you think of Christian veterinary mission, you might think of missions. Well, they are often serving people around the world through the veterinary profession. So we send veterinarians around the world to help people with their animals. That's the easy way to talk about what CVM does. When I'm talking to a stranger, that's kind of how I open. But part of our arm here is sharing Christ's love to the veterinary profession, because as most of the people listening probably know, it's a very dark profession, has a lot of mental health challenges. And so we are sending the veterinary professionals and students on short-term and long-term missions. So we're serving through them, but we're also sharing Christ's love to them by encouraging them and ministering to them and just loving them and praying with them regularly. So we're providing devotionals, we're providing retreat weekends, we're providing our conference, and we're just providing lots of opportunities with other like-minded Christian veterinary students and professionals to have that fellowship that is really rich and valuable for them, as many of them struggle alone in the profession.
And it's really important. I think that when we think about the professional aspect of it, it's nice to have someone, and especially regionally speaking, having someone as a professional that you can call and talk with, can share a prayer request with, because veterinary professionals, we do feel isolated quite often, and knowing that CVM has a team of folks that are right there to pick up the phone, answer an email, respond to a text message, even sit down at a CE conference, in the exhibit hall with somebody. It's nice to have that kind of personal touch and interaction. Do you find that there are, because I would think that every veterinarian who's a Christian knows about CVM. Do you find that, like, going to a conference, that people are still surprised that there are Christian veterinarians that are doing things like this?
Yes, there's a large discrepancy, and I should have had the numbers ready, but there's a large discrepancy between what the AVMA says is the percentage of veterinarians who claim to be Christians and the number of veterinarians in our database. So it is maybe a 20th of them are involved with CVM. It's not a large number, and some of them are very aware of us. Probably they're just also very involved in their church, and maybe they think of us as just a mission arm, which is kind of a stereotype we've been trying to get over for about a decade. That even if you're not interested in missions, we'd still love to have you involved with CVM because there's so much more to us than just going overseas internationally or cross culturally. There's a lot of ministry to be done here as well. So there are a lot of people that are aware of us, but maybe not involved. And then there are still people that come up to us regularly that aren't aware of us at all. So we're trying to overcome that as well.
Yeah, it's just an interesting kind of just an interesting side note. You would think that everyone would be aware, and you're probably right in that when you think about CVM, maybe the M stands out for a lot of folks, and don't recognize that there's a lot of ways when we talk about challenging, empowering, facilitating veterinary professionals to live out their faith journey in service of others. That includes right here in the United States, and that can be equally as challenging to move through here in the United States as it would be abroad. And so
sometimes more challenging.
Yeah, I would agree. Like there's a lot of things that we had freedom to talk about and do in Ethiopia that we don't have that I don't have the freedom mobility to do here at the clinic here in the US. So trying to have having someone that you can talk with about that and to bounce ideas off of and just to support is a huge thing. So I appreciate that. What about the student aspect of your team? What's involved with that, and how are student ministries carried out through your department?
So we have a campus ministry, so a student ministry on almost all of the veterinary campuses in North America. There are a couple that are new and that we haven't quite found the right fit or the right connecting person. But for the most part, we're in the veterinary schools and on the campuses. And so we have a club there that meets and fellowships and serves and studies the word and goes on mission trips and comes together with other schools regionally through our Real Life Real Impact retreat weekends. And so we mentor and encourage and, like you said, challenge, empower, and facilitate those students and especially those student leaders. So we really are kind of the point person to coordinate and help the student leaders however we can.
Well, and you also, as if that wasn't enough, you also provide a lot of support for pre-vet students as well, don't you?
Yeah, we do quite a bit for pre-vet students. It's a little bit harder to know where to stop when so the veterinary schools are limited, although they are growing quite a bit. There are about 12 in the pipeline right now, new ones. So that is a little bit daunting for our team without some growth. How are we going to reach all of those? But the pre-vet schools, pretty much any school can be a pre-vet school. You can have a pre-vet major at pretty much any school. So we try to meet the need of student groups or pre-vet campuses that have a desire. So we don't reach out to every undergrad campus and say, can we start a Christian veterinary fellowship here? But if somebody comes and asks us, can we start a Christian veterinary fellowship here? Then we try not to ever say no.
That's always a good rule of thumb, trying not to say no. God love you. So that would be a huge challenge trying to provide those types of growth opportunities for every vet school and then potentially every pre-vet school. What other types of challenges does your team face, not just in student ministry, but maybe even in workplace ministry as well?
Probably the same challenge in two different ways would be margin or bandwidth. So, like I said, with our team, we've got 6 or 7 of us with Lisa in Canada. And if we want to get into more schools, that means spreading ourselves more thin, right? So it's hard for us to reach as many places as we want, especially as the profession is trying to grow to meet the demand for more associates. And then the same challenge in a little bit different light is that people have very little margin in their lives. And so people don't have much bandwidth for more meetings. And so a lot of people want more opportunities for fellowship. We get requests often for a local group or what we call a professional Christian veterinary fellowship group. But people are so busy that those groups rarely thrive because they don't have much margin in their lives either. So they have this desire, and we want to help them fill that and meet that, but it's hard to get a regular meeting group. So that's one challenge that we found, is how do we encourage the profession through fellowship regularly? And so we haven't really found a perfect fit for that, but we do think that the real life real impact retreats that we do, and now the CVM veterinary conference, are meeting that need, not weekly or monthly, but annually. And that's really scratching an itch for people to get together with other like-minded Christian professionals and students.
Well, and I remember having, I sat down with Cora, and who had met a friend through a real life real impact, and then has continued to gone back to a real life real impact every year to meet up with their friends. And even though you have these once a year facilitated gatherings, it seems like there's a lot of people that are making connections and and then keeping up those connections outside of those meeting areas, which means that CVM's done a good job of, and your team's done a good job of catalyzing something that continues long after the conference is over, which is great. That's kind of what you want.
Yeah, when it happens organically, it's beautiful like that. When we force it, it sometimes doesn't work. And so that's the challenge for us. Like, we can't make organic happen. We pray that it does, and we try to allow for it and create spaces for it. But we have a hard time when we just set up meetings for people to get together. Yeah. But when they want to do it and set it up themselves, it's beautiful.
And I would imagine that there's been enough of that because, over the last 11 years, you've been connected to this particular department, working in this particular area. What are some of the things that have kind of changed over the years, but also the things that have just kept you encouraged and blessed by this type of ministry?
The growth has been a change for us because we have to make decisions about how do we serve the people. Do we want to grow in width or depth or both, and how do we balance that? So we've had to have lots of discussions about, if we add on more things, do we cut back other things unless we can add on more people? And so we're always balancing all of those ideas. One of the changes that we've kind of a focus for the future, for next year especially, is we hope to focus more on paraprofessionals. So that's been kind of a challenge for us, is how to work with the rest of the veterinary staff, not just the veterinary student and the veterinarian, but how to be on the radar of the veterinary staff, because their mental health challenges are even higher than the veterinarian. And so we want to support them. We want to share Christ's love to them just the same as we are to the veterinarian. And so we have been doing that, but there's been a bit of a disconnect that we're trying to overcome, in that they don't always feel as valid as the veterinarian. And so we're changing our verbiage. We're hoping to use the word paraprofessionals more and more now. And we're hoping to focus on them individually and really reach out to them. The school part makes it a little challenging because students in veterinary school are there for 4 years, usually, except Arizona now has your 3-year one. Crazy Arizonans. But they're there together. And so they have that kind of easy place for us to help them meet. In the technical schools, it's often 2 years, and very often now they're virtual. And so we have a hard time meeting the students in school as technicians. And then we also want to reach assistants and receptionists, because they are getting the brunt of the clients' the client frustrations, I guess. And so we want to reach all of those. So that's a new direction. Now that we have Nancy Crutch on as a former practice manager, she really has a passion and a heart for that sector of the profession. And so we are following her lead and walking into that as well as we can. Some of the people in those roles are not in it for life either. So it's a bit of a more transition role for some people. So we hope to find ways to encourage the paraprofessionals.
Well, and that's, for veterinarians who are wondering how their faith and profession fit together, wow, one of the easiest places to show Christ's love is with the people that you work with day in and day out. And giving,
That's your mission field.
that's your mission field, and showing, I mean, the way that you throw hemostats at your staff is a reflection of where you are at the moment.
The pointed end or not? Is that what you
That's
mean?
right. Exactly. I mean, the truth is that, like, this is the hard part, right? Because and even I find this working in the church, right? My kids see me every single day, not just on Sunday and behind a pulpit. Your staff sees you, for better or for worse, in the best situations, the worst situations, when you're tired, when you're stressed, when you're happy. I mean, all those things. And it's a real opportunity for you to show kindness and gentleness and love and forgiveness, and all of those things, which make a huge impact in a profession that is already pressed well beyond their physical strength and mental abilities at the moment. And so I appreciate you thinking about that, for sure.
Yeah, I just wanted to put in a plug.
Yeah.
That's one thing that we hope to encourage people to do as we speak to the veterinarians. They can be an in for us to the rest of their staff, because we don't have schools to meet the rest of their staff, really. In conferences, even, we don't, because receptionists aren't coming to conferences. Not all assistants are coming to conferences. So we hope that veterinarians will bring, even fund their staff to come with them to Real Life Real Impact retreats and be encouraged and be loved on and be pointed toward Jesus, and come to the CVM Veterinary Conference and have that same opportunity for fellowship and worship together with the veterinary profession. So as the veterinarians, they can be the point person to kind of encourage and invite for us.
So let me ask this then, because, and you've mentioned the CE conference in Nashville that's been held annually. You've mentioned Real Life Real Impact, which kind of moves around. How would someone get information about upcoming events, and even more importantly, for professionals who may just want to connect and have not figured out how to do that yet? What's the best way for someone to connect to your team and figure out how they can get plugged in?
Mm-hmm. So I think an easy way to learn a lot about CVM is through our website or the app, Christian Veterinary Mission app, or cvm.org for the website. But if you want to take a step further, you can go to the Find My Region Rep site on the website, and you can find your region rep, and you can email us and just directly connect with us. There's a map so you can find out where you are and who your region rep is, because you probably don't remember my description from earlier. And then another way that you would stay up to date with what's going on with CVM, like those Real Life Real Impacts, which are our favorite time of year. Well, they were until the veterinary conference came, and now that's just like a big Real Life Real Impact with 900 people.
Exactly.
But to plug into CVM through cvm.org/connect. And that's just the first way to get into our system, so that you get our emails, just monthly emails that have like updates about where we're going to be and what's coming up. And so that would be a good way. And then always social media. You can find us at Christian Veterinary Mission on Instagram or Facebook. And so you can see us talking about all the things that are coming up there as well. And you can get reminders about the podcast too.
Thank you. That was a good plug. Like and subscribe. Is that what I need to say?
We're so excited. I mean, talking about what we're excited about, the podcast has been in our brains for like 4 or 5 years, and it's finally happening. So we love it. Yeah.
A long time. And we would hopefully as this is kind of continuing on, I think we're, my goal from the outset was to be able to have enough content that someone could sit down and binge for 24 hours and not have to take a break. So we're getting close. We're getting close to that moment. We're not quite there yet. A few more episodes. I know you got to have goals, right? But that's the thing, is that when we think about CVM, and especially with your department, I think it's important for folks to realize that you and your team are here just to kind of help people figure out the space that they're in, to figure out what God's calling them to do, their faith walk. It's not about getting everybody to sign up to go to Mongolia. It's not about making sure that everyone does this or does that. Your team does a great job of just meeting people where they are and helping them discern God's will and God's voice in their life, and help them kind of move through that, because the journey is never really easy. So I appreciate everything that you do and what your team does in the workplace and student ministries department, for sure.
Well, thank you. It's such a pleasure. We love it so much.
Well, for folks that are listening, hopefully you have learned a little bit more about not just Dr. Lauren Charles, but also the Workplace and Student Ministries Department at CVM. It's always a challenge knowing exactly what God desires from us in the place where He has placed us. And so it's good to know that Dr. Lauren and the entire Workplace and Student Ministries team of CVM is here to serve you, to help you, and most importantly, to help you learn how to live well at the intersection of two roads crossing.
Thank you for listening to Two Roads Crossing, a podcast production of the Christian Veterinary Mission. If you are blessed by this content, like and subscribe so that you are alerted when new content is released. If you would like more information about CVM, or if you have questions, comments, or topical suggestions, you can find us online at www.cvm.org. Or you can contact us by emailing podcast@cvm.org. God has a plan for the nations, and that plan includes you. We pray that CVM has encouraged you to live out your calling with confidence and competence. So, until next time, may the voice of the shepherd ring loud and clear as you follow him in faith to the intersection of two roads crossing.